I'm Scott Dibbles with the Investing News Network. Today I'm speaking with Remi Piet, who is Senior Director at America's Market Intelligence. Thank you for joining me, Remi.
My pleasure, Scott.
So, over the weekend, there were two elections that happened in Latin America. Firstly, there was Argentina, where they held primary elections. The elections are designed to whittle down candidates heading into the presidential election, which happens later on. And in Guatemala, they had the real deal. They had a presidential election, so they have a new president-elect. So, Remi, we're going to start with Argentina. The primary election result was not what the incumbent, Mauricio Macri, was hoping for. What can you tell me about the result, and what does this mean?
Well, obviously that was a huge blow to Macri's ambition of being reelected as president in Argentina. The size of his defeat, we're talking 47% against 32%, so 15% difference in this primary, is something that looks very hard for him to catch up to, and that's unlikely that he would actually win the elections to be held in October and November in case there's a runoff. Actually, even if those were the results of the primaries were to be repeated, there wouldn't even be a runoff because you need to be either receiving 50% of the votes or 40% and 10% margin with the second candidate. And right now we're seeing 15% margin. So it's likely that Fernández and his VP, Cristina Fernández, the former president of Argentina, will be elected at the end of this year. Obviously the answers from the market, the reaction from the market were extremely strong, with the peso going down to 59 pesos per dollar. This will have strong consequences on the capacity of Argentina to finance some of its projects. And the biggest worry from the market is obviously the possibility that Argentina will default on its debt and will go back to the policies that were put in place under the Cristina Fernández administration, with a series of barriers to export and imports, but also exchange taxation on exchanges, and going back to the old fiscal policies that were probably not in the best interest of channeling investment in the country. If you actually look at mining interests specifically, probably the picture is not as bleak as some might think. Both Macri and Cristina Fernández, or Fernández, which will be the future president in that specific ticket, are in favor of mining investment in the country. Mining actually got developed throughout the Kirchner administration before Macri's administration. The problem will be in question of transparency, and who will actually benefit from the capacity to invest in the country. You probably will see a strong investment from Chinese companies under Cristina Fernández administration. You will also probably see issues of transparency and capacity to finance some of the operation, because of the likelihood that Fernández will follow the Kirchner's policies of getting Argentina probably outside of the traditional globalization flaws, and have some policies against capital flight in the country.
Okay, and was this result expected? You said that it was a blow to Macri. Perhaps he wasn't expecting to lose quite as badly as he did.
Well, most observers actually believe that Macri would fail during those primaries, and that electors would use the primaries to send a message to Macri. And unfortunately for Macri, the size of his defeat is much higher and bigger than what most people believed. You have to understand that those primaries are very good indicators for the future elections in the country, because everyone is obligated to vote, and if they don't, they will actually have to pay fines. So everyone turned up to the elections and cast their ballots for this election. It was possible that a 3 to 4% margin of defeat from Macri would be something that you might have been able to catch up with before the election, but 15%. Clearly is a very large margin, and the market's reaction obviously show that. In the issue here, and we should not overstate the importance of this election. Obviously, it will decide a lot of the macro policies for Argentina. But when you're mining investors, you also, and that's the most important element to your due diligence, is to understand the level of risks at the local level, understand the community management issues. It will still be possible to move forward the series of investment in Argentina, there has been a series of recent investment in the lithium mines, especially from Yaramed, for example, from Chinese companies. Also, you will be able, even from traditional investors, to help develop mining operations in Argentina, but you have to be much more cautious on who you work with, on the transparency of the transaction, on the type of contract that your mining investment signs with subcontractors, and on the way that some of those companies manage their relationship with entities, government, workers' unions, and so on, because this level of risk is likely to be increased under the Fernandez and Kirchner de Fernandez administration.
Okay, and so obviously the markets haven't responded well to the response with the peso down so far. Have we seen any reactions from the miners themselves so far, or is it too early?
Well, it's too early to tell. I mean, obviously, a lot of the investments that people were hoping to see at the end of the Macri administration did not happen because of the risk of him not being reelected. I believe that if you had seen a very positive result in those primaries for the Macri administration, it's possible that you would have seen an increase in the presence of mining companies over the next few months. But they're likely to stay on the sideline at least until the elections, obviously. But then again, as I was saying, any sound investors will be able to make good investment in Argentina in a series of good projects. There are some very interesting reserves. The clear need from the national government, whether it's Fernandez or Macri, to develop the mining sector and generate U.S. dollar currencies inside Argentina. That's one of the only ways for Argentina to develop it, and that's why you're seeing a strong focus on developing Vaca Muerta in the natural gas and oil sector, but also supporting the mining investment in the country. But you will have to be very cautious in terms of what is the level of above the ground risk on each one of those operations. Now, interestingly, I think it's important to mention that even under the Macri administration, we've seen a steady support to mining investment, but we also had the same under the Fernandez administration. Even over the last few months, some of the opposition deputies or representatives at the National Congress, but also in the Provincial Congress, so therefore following the Kirchner de Fernandez line, had been even more bullish in supporting mining investment in the country. In the case of Mendoza, for example, the province of Mendoza, you have a specific law that prevents the use of a very large range of chemicals in the extractive industry, so therefore virtually preventing investment in the mining sector. That law has been put on the agenda for repelling, and that was actually placed by a Cristina Fernández supporter at the provincial assembly. So that shows that sometimes the idea of just seeing leftist Cristina Fernández and Fernández administration versus a pro-market Macri administration would be a little bit too much of a cliche here. It's not because Macri will not be re-elected that you will not be able to have sound and strong mining projects developing in Argentina, but you will obviously have to be much more cautious on how you operate and what is your relationship with the political actors, economic actors, and social actors around the mining site and at the national level.
Okay, and would it be fair to assume that most of the investors looking at Argentina will be holding off until the election result is known?
Yeah, and obviously right now the investors and the investment communities are under scenarios that Macri will not be reelected. It's very unlikely that he'll be able to catch up with his 15% defeat, margin of defeat. So we already saw a series of the investment community actors and banking move away from Argentina and certain projects in the infrastructure sector, but also in the extractive industry, and it's likely to continue. So that's why that there's a space that actually opens up for non-conventional investors and individual investors in some of the mining sector, where the competition to invest will be less. But again, here the key point will be issues of due diligence and knowing who to partner with. We're happy, obviously, to support any investor looking at Argentina in the future.
Okay, and so looking at the other election that happened over the weekend, so there was the real deal in Guatemala. they have a new presidential-elect, the center-right candidate Alejandro Giammattei. He beat the former First Lady of Guatemala, Sandra Torres, in the election on Sunday. What can you tell me about this result, Remi? Why is it important, and how should the mining community be looking at it?
Well, first, in case to explain a little bit the result here, the election was much more of a traditional election between a leftist or center-left candidate, Sandra Torres, the former First Lady. She was married to former President Colom in Guatemala, and a much more pro-market administration and probably pro-investment, mining investment in Guatemala, represented by Alejandro Giammattei. Alejandro Giammattei has run on a platform of liberalization of market, of fiscal reforms, and much more of a crackdown on insecurity in the country, while Sandra Torres was much more linked to, let's say, the lower and poorer class of the population, and also had clear links with anti-mining interests in Guatemala. So the victory of Giammattei will probably be very much welcomed by mining investors and mining companies. In a country, Guatemala, that is known for its potential, a series of minerals, gold, obviously, copper also in Guatemala, there are already a series of companies that were present. And Guatemala is known to be a country that has suffered a large amount of local opposition to mining operations. Obviously, everybody knows issues that Goldcorp has faced in Guatemala, and also Tower Resources and the Escobal mine, now bought by Pan American Silver. Those are mining projects that have been placed on hold by a series of local oppositions and local votes against mining projects. And so that's the key question on Guatemala. Whether this development of opposition to sound mining projects will continue, what has created a wave of local opposition to mining projects around Latin America started in Guatemala, or are we seeing now much more, let's say, favorable and sound support from the national government that will trickle down at the local level? There are a series of interesting projects in Guatemala. You do have obviously Bluestone Resources that operates on the mine there, trying to move it forward. You also have Binegua that has a series of exploration fields that are very promising, and you have Pan American Silver that is trying to relaunch the Escobal mine in Guatemala. Whether they will have the capacity and the managerial capacity, more than I think, to develop sound relationship with communities, to understand the play in terms of political conflict and antagonism from other economic actors, will actually decide whether those projects will move forward or not under a more favorable administration with Giammattei.
Okay, and so you just said that Giammattei's administration could be more favorable to mining. What about the outgoing president, Jimmy Morales? So he was constitutionally barred. Was he open to mining? Will Giammattei be is he cut from the same cloth, or is this a turn to the right?
Well, Jimmy Morales was very much of an outsider. He was actually going much more from the show business industry than from the politician world. He actually beat Sandra Torres in the elections, in the last round of elections. He was supposed to be pro-business and actually develop a series of policies that were encouraging for investors. But here, the main element, and that's what you mentioned, the barring from office, is that Guatemala is known for a key institution that was put in place at the beginning of the Jimmy Morales administration, the United Nations convention, or let's say body against impunity in Guatemala, that was able to track down a series of corruption scandals and embezzlement by different key actors in Guatemala. This was a very successful institution that was able to operate until a few months ago, when Jimmy Morales himself was placed under scrutiny by some of the investigators of that commission. The fact that Jimmy Morales prevented the commission from moving forward and continue operating, the fact, more importantly, that neither Sandra Torres, when she ran for office, or Giammattei, now elected, refused to confirm that they would actually allow that commission to operate, makes us very worried about the quality of the business environment in Guatemala, and very cautious on the fact that investors should be, very with caution when they look at how to operate and how to invest in Guatemala. Again, I'm going back to this idea that what makes a successful investment in Latin America, but more specifically in Argentina, as I was mentioning, and Guatemala right now, is doing clear and strong due diligence on the type of titles, but also the type of partners on the site of a mining site, whether you're looking at subcontractors or you're looking at how they operate with criminalization to protect the mining site, or together in front of mining communities and neighboring communities of a mining site, focusing especially on trying to find common approach and value creation around the mining site to limit opposition. And that's what some companies, Pan American Silver has developed probably a sounder approach to it. That was the case under Tao. I know that Bluestone Resources is also very strong at looking at how they will be able to operate that mine if they have the financing to do so. And some other projects are probably obviously better than some others if you want to invest in Guatemala or in Argentina in that case.
Okay, and so moving on from the election results, just wrapping up, there's been a lot of developments in southern Peru recently. The Tia Maria project is currently suspended again, and the Quellaveco project is currently facing a strike. Just quickly, can you tell me a little bit about what is happening in southern Peru and why it's significant?
Yes, clearly. I mean, we're monitoring the situation on a daily basis, regularly, because it's so essential to understand what's happening right now in southern Peru, especially in the Moquegua province. Peru is obviously known for the strength of its mining sector, the importance of the mining sector for the national economy of Peru. More than 60% of Peruvian exports emanates from the mining sector. That shows the importance of the mining sector in the country. But the future of mining in Peru very much holds on the capacity of the country to develop very large projects that have been, stalled or limited in their development over the last few years. So one of them is Tia Maria. I'll come back to it in the Moquegua province. Another one is Las Bambas, still in southern Peru. And the last one is Conga, which is in northern Peru, operated by Newmont. All those projects are either not, under development, not authorized today, or are facing strong opposition in the case of Las Bambas in terms of how to, operate the exports of mineral or provide, supplies to the mine. So all these are the situation is very complicated right now on those three projects. In the case of Tia Maria, it was the third time over the last 10 years that the Peruvian government tried to give the green light to Southern Copper, the company that operates Tia Maria, to move forward with the project. Again, it led to a local uprising, a local opposition to it. The local governor, Zenon Cuevas, has actually opposed the project like he did in the past, but the unrest has been so strong that immediately the Peruvian government suspended the authorization from Tia Maria to progress. Now, this was not a surprise. The operations of Tia Maria has led to strong opposition locally for a decade, as I was mentioning. What is more troublesome now is that neighboring operations of well-operating mines, in the case of the Anglo-American Quellaveco project, for example, have been impacted by obviously this, worsening climate against mining operations. The fact that you have an organized criminal organization that are being strengthened by the opposition, Tia Maria and other projects that now try to flourish and develop their own opposition and their own out of mine. And so that project, Quellaveco, is now facing a complete strike since Monday. The criticism from the communities are the fact that allegedly the Anglo-American team would not have followed suit on the promise to hire up to above 80% of the non-qualified workforce should have emanated from the neighboring communities. Anglo-American was also supposed to develop and contribute to the local investment to a high level, and the allegations are that they did not follow suit on those promises, although Anglo-American has denied this. But what I'm mentioning here is that investors and mining companies should be very cautious of two things. The first one is that you should not only limit your due diligence to the one mining operation that you're looking at. You should also, have a clear understanding of what are the neighboring operations, what are the neighboring and provincial level, risks, because this will impact your mine as well as it is run today. And the second one is that issues of value creation around the mine, of creating jobs, but more than anything, of helping foster an important business ecosystem around your mine, is extremely important to create alliances with local actors. And those alliances are probably the ones that will be the most important throughout the lifetime of a mine, and facing opposition forces or facing criminal activity that will try to limit the development of your mine. So that's why you have to be always very cautious of monitoring and developing strong stakeholder mapping, but not only limited to stakeholder mapping, but really understanding how to create value and how to build alliances with those key actors around the mining site. Right now, Coyadeco is facing a strike, obviously, which has been very much influenced by the Tia Maria situation, and it will be very important for Anglo-American or for investors and operators of neighboring mines to understand those logics and those mechanisms so that it doesn't happen to them.
Fantastic. Well, we will wrap it up there. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me, Remi.
My pleasure, Scott.
And that was Remi Piet, Senior Director at America's Market Intelligence. I'm Scott Tibbles with the Investing News Network. You can find us at investingnews.com, and feel free to follow us at Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.